What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Ideal Offseason. This is the series where I get to put the GM cap on for a little bit and help an NBA team navigate through their offseason. We try to make this series as realistic as possible, meaning like we're not just going to be like, we're signing LeBron James or we're doing this, right? Like we're trying to take some real world applications, trying to really think through what makes sense. We're trying to look at each team and try to figure out how we can actually set them on the right course for success. If we're rebuilding the San Antonio Spurs, we're not probably trying to win a championship next year. We're trying to make them just like a little bit better and get them going in the right direction. If it's a team like the Los Angeles Lakers and they got LeBron James, we're probably trying to help them win a championship, right? So we're trying to look at each team a little bit more purposefully. But hey, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. I love having the conversations with you guys, even though you guys get a little heated about it for some reason, but you know what? It's the internet, and that's what we expect. But anyway, let's get on to the video. So we're back here on the Ideal Offseason spreadsheet. If you guys have been following the series, you guys know that this is a spreadsheet that I put together to just kind of help like visualize everything, but a lot of people have asked about the spreadsheet, and so the way that you can get it is literally just leave me a comment saying, I would like the spreadsheet. You can phrase it however you want, say it in Spanish if you want. I really don't care. Please don't make me read a bunch of different languages, but do whatever you want. What I'll do then is I'll drop a link in my Discord, or a link for my Discord. You can click on it, DM me there, and I'll get you hooked up with it, and you can hang around the Discord if you want. We're trying to talk basketball there all the time, so really, really cool thing. But anyway, Indiana Pacers today just got bounced from the Eastern Conference Finals. Put up a hell of a fight. All the credit in the world to this team that fought through a lot of adversity this season. A lot of people didn't expect them to get there. You can listen to people talk about like, oh, they beat this team or they beat this team without this guy. Like, I just don't like that stuff, man. Like, yes, maybe it's not as fun. Like, we can be bummed that we didn't get to see those matchups, but I just think it's lame when you don't give a team credit for, like, beating another team. But anyway, the Pacers find themselves in a really interesting situation, right? Like, obviously, this starting lineup is missing a particular person, and that's Pascal Siakam at the 4 here. And obviously, spoiler alert, we're bringing Pascal Siakam back. That's going to be a big part of this ideal offseason, right? Is making sure he gets his money. Pascal Siakam's going to get a lot of money. So what moves can we make to make sure that we're utilizing like the cap space effectively that we have right now, so that when we do bring Pascal Siakam in and we kind of lock ourselves into not being able to make many more moves going forward, we feel like we're in a good place. Because this Pacers team has a lot of really interesting like young players. Like, they're still growing. Even their superstar Tyrese Halliburton, you can say, is still kind of entering his prime. Like, this was his first like real playoff run and everything. And there were moments where he definitely had to learn some things. So this team is getting better still, which is a good thing. We don't have to go out and find like some stud young player or anything like that. Like, we've got a very good foundational base. I think it's also fair to ask the question, though, of what is the ceiling of this core? Like, if we really build up, like, the young guys here, like, do we think we can compete for a championship? I don't know. Like, this team got really close this year, but they did beat some teams that were missing some players. And so that's kind of the thing you have to weigh with this. And I feel like the perspective that we need to have with this is we have to make sure we stay flexible enough as an organization to where if another player, like, really becomes available, we're able to kind of make a move for them. Because we're probably not going to be getting anybody via free agency at this point, or like drafting some big stud. We're probably going to be too good to be like too high in the draft. And so how do we like maintain that viability, if you will? And I want to give a lot of credit to the Pacers organization. You guys have probably heard me talk about this. I talked about this in my Jazz ideal offseason. I'm like, the Pacers are like one of probably 3, maybe 4 franchises. I'd say probably 3 that it's pretty widely recognized. And I've been around the NBA quite a bit in my time. Like, there's 3 franchises that are always trying to win. It's the Indiana Pacers, the Miami Heat, and the Utah Jazz. Like, those 3 organizations don't bottom out. It's not what they do. They want to win basketball games at all time. And I love them for that. Like, maybe they don't win a championship because they never like take the time and go back all the way down to step 1. But that culture of winning is what keeps them around at all times. And I think that's huge. And eventually it's going to work out for them. But anyway, let's talk about the resources we have at hand. So obviously we have $32 million in cap space to work with this offseason. That's awesome, right? A lot of it's going to go to Pascal Siakam. I can guarantee you he's going to be making a lot more than $32 million a year. I'm literally just going to look up what he's supposed to make in his next contract, and that's probably what we're going to give him, because it's probably just going to be the max contract. So probably try to make a couple moves before then via the trade and the draft and everything. So I've got a couple trade things that we're going to take a look at. But anyway, draft picks wise, no first round picks. We got a first round pick next year, which is good because next year's class is really, really good. We want to make sure we get a piece of that pie. We don't need 3 second-round picks this year. What we're going to do with those picks, I'm not so sure. I get the feeling we're probably going to end up packaging like 36 and maybe like 51 or something like that, and maybe trying to like move up a little bit in the draft or something. I don't know. We really don't need more than like 1 second round pick on this team. I think it's important when you have good teams, especially ones that are going to be in the tax aprons like we are, that you find these cheap guys to fill out the back end of your bench, just because it's an easy way to keep developing talent while not paying just like a metric fuck ton, because this is a business at the end of the day, right? Like we can't just be forking out like all this money left and right. But otherwise, it's not a huge collection of draft picks. I mean, the Pascal Siakam trade is where a lot of those went, and that's totally fine. Like, Siakam was awesome for them this year, and he's a really, really good basketball player that's in his prime right now, so I can't hate on it. But let's take a look at the roster in general that we have. We have Tyrese Halliburton locked down. Awesome. Miles Turner, last year of his contract or whatever. I don't really touch like extensions or anything like that. Like, we can just presume that that's probably going to happen. Miles Turner was really, really good for them again this season, so presume that Miles Turner and them are going to figure out some sort of extension. It really shouldn't affect the outcome of my video too much. TJ McConnell, his contract isn't completely guaranteed. Only $5 million of it is. That's why I have this marked here. I'm just going to tell you we're just going to guarantee TJ McConnell's contract right about now. TJ McConnell, extremely valuable player to this team. I promise you I'm not sending him anywhere. Don't worry, Indiana Pacers fans, and sorry everyone else's fan base that wants him. Benedict Mathurin. Benedict Mathurin was a big player they were missing this year. Benedict Mathurin was getting you around 14, 15 points a game in his second NBA season, a little bit down from the year before, but that's because there were just a couple other scorers on the team this year that were taking up some more of the points. And he improved his three-point percentage, which was a big thing for him from the previous season. Still only getting up about 3 to 4 attempts, which isn't bad, but hitting on 37%, huge improvement. Benedict Mathurin, really, really fearless. I choked for a second there, don't worry about it. Benedict Mathurin, really fearless basketball player, young player that we want to make sure we continue to develop and give him a chance to shine, so he's going to be a big improvement for the team next year. We're picking up his option for sure. Jaylen Smith has a player option for 5.4. I'm going to guess that we're going to accept that, and honestly, Jaylen Smith is probably going to be a guy we look to trade, and it's because of Jarris Walker, mostly. So Jarris Walker was the lottery pick for this team last year, and it did not go well for the kid. Barely saw any NBA action, and there just wasn't a ton to even talk about with him. We're like, wow, he's not even like good enough to get like on the court. He spent most of the season with the G League, and so we don't want to waste this pick, right? We're not giving up on Jarris Walker at all, so I want to make sure we're giving him an avenue to actually get some playing time next year. And so Jaylen Smith obviously becomes the odd man out with that. $5 million, we can look to try and pick up somebody else. Like, Jaylen Smith is a very quality basketball player at the end of the day. I really like Jaylen Smith. He just kind of seems like the odd man out in this. So if we can take this $5 million and turn it into $5 million of a player at a better position for us, maybe an actual lengthy wing or something like that. I don't know who it would be, but if we can do something like that, I'd feel pretty good about that. Isaiah Jackson's got a team option as well. We're going to pick that up. Isaiah Jackson was really big coming off the bench for the Pacers in this playoff series. Brings a lot of energy, brings a lot of drive, nice defensive player, really, really cool. Ben Shepherd, a young guy we want to make sure we continue to develop, right? Played really, really well in the playoffs. I really wasn't that familiar with him until I saw him play like in the playoffs, and just really smart is what I would describe him as. Didn't score a ton of points or anything. Not a big stat sheet stuffer. He either had an open shot and took it, or he was like, nope, I'm just going to get the ball back to the best players on the team, and I'm going to go work off them some more. Like, not wasting time, just being a great team player. You're going to be able to stick around in the NBA for a long time if you've already figured that out. Andrew Nembhard, another really interesting young player. I made the comparison in one of my videos with Andrew Nembhard because he's playing the 2 right now, given the current depth chart that we have, and that's fine. He's probably more of a point guard, right? I think we could all agree on that. I wonder, and this is the comment that I was saying I made in the video, I wonder if Andrew Nembhard is like the next Dennis Schroeder, where like people are going to always be like, so is he like a starter caliber point guard? Can he be like a starter on a championship team or something? And maybe he never will be. I don't want to say he never will be, but that's just kind of the vibe I'm getting, because Schroeder, young in his career, playing behind a good point guard in Jeff Teague, and he was kind of playing behind Halliburton, right? And people are going to be like, oh, how good could he be if he just kind of had the keys to things a little bit? And we saw Nembhard struggle, like with end-of-game situations, just being young, and that's totally fine, but we obviously want to make sure that we're trying to develop Nembhard, keeping him happy. Very dynamic player. Seems like a fearless player. Makes a ton of sense that he's on the Pacers, so love him. Kendall Brown, not a guaranteed contract. Kendall Brown just hasn't really done much in the NBA, to be frank with you guys. He's just not all that impactful. He's a 6'8" wing that we just haven't seen much on the court. I'm not going to be picking up Kendall Brown's contract. I think I'm just going to let him go. So take that as you will. Sorry about that, Pacers fans. The last one we got is Aaron Nesmith, a hidden gem that this team picked up that the Celtics, coincidentally, just kind of discarded. They're like, yeah, no, we don't really need him anymore. And he was really, really good for the team this year. You got a 3-and-D guy that brings a ton of energy and can attack the rim pretty well, is motivated to play. He's going to be a really valuable bench player for this team going forward. So I really, really like it. I think you've got an awesome core here to work with, and that leaves us with 5 roster spots. Oh, and you're probably wondering what this like $2.409 million is. So the Pacers actually like owe a couple dudes that they've like released over the past couple years about this much in total money, so I put it there so we can have an accurate cap reflection. Don't worry about all those players. I don't remember them all. I know one of them was Nick Stauskas, Sauce Castile. So yeah, this is the last year that they have to pay a couple of those guys, and it's $2.4 million. It's not a huge deal. So yep, just know that that's there. So what do we want to do first? We have 5 roster spots, and you know what? Here's the first thing I do want to do. Let's go just look at who our free agents are and know the amount of spaces that we need to keep open. Pascal Siakam, need a roster spot for him. Doug McDermott, not too worried about it. If there's like a veteran minimum player that we need at the end of this, I'd consider bringing him back. We'll presume that he likes it here. Obi Toppin, got to bring him back, right? Obi Toppin made a lot of big development pushes for the team this year. Big pickup for them. We're definitely bringing Obi Toppin back. Jalen Smith has the player option. Otherwise, it's some two-way players that I'm not too worried about. Ooh, James Johnson. I'd love to bring James Johnson back at the end if we could. All you Pacers fans know out there, he doesn't get on the court, but he's just willing to fight anybody at any point. And it's just cool to have a dude like that on the team. Like, there kind of is a role for it. Like, he's just the team leader, keeping everybody in check. And the Pacers organization loves a guy like that on the team. So if we can, I would like to bring back James Johnson. So 2 to 3 players that are probably like pretty strong candidates to come back. So we're looking to trade Jalen Smith. We're looking to do something with these picks because we don't need them all. I'd like to have a draft selection. Having a rookie on the team is always a good thing at the end of the day. One, it's good for culture because there's like a young guy in the team that everybody's kind of trying to develop and they can just kind of poke fun at and stuff like that. That's just being a rookie. But we don't need 3 second-round picks. So we're going to try to push these assets into the future or just try to find a way to move up in general. So let's start off with this. Let's find Jalen Smith on the player contract list here. And I just want to find guys that are around his salary in the NBA that we could look to make a simple trade with. You know, something very simple where like one team's like, we got too many wings, and we're like, we got too many bigs. And they're like, okay, let's just like swap these dudes. And maybe they're like a little bit better and we can not salt them, sweeten them with some second round picks or something like that. So I'm just going to take like a quick look around and see if there's not a guy that we can go pick up that might be able to help us. All right, instantly my mind is going to a couple people. Corey Kispert is really interesting to me. I don't think a Jalen Smith for Corey Kispert move is all that probably great for the Wizards, but I like the idea. Moses Moody, I think, is very doable. They're definitely looking to trade Moses Moody. They're looking to bring in some assets for him. Do we have the assets to make that happen? I don't necessarily know, but they're probably looking for a big or something and a more dynamic big, so I think that in itself makes some sense. I feel like Moses Moody's probably a little more valuable to them than that. Zaire Williams, I think, is a really interesting guy for us to take a look at. Zaire Williams is a younger guy in the NBA right now, hitting 22 years old, 8 points a game for the Grizzlies last year. Came into the NBA pretty hot, honestly, looking like a guy that was going to develop pretty nicely. Given his size, he's like 6'8", 6'9". He can guard multiple positions, pretty athletic, was able to put the ball on the court a little bit. And while he wasn't converting a huge amount from 3 or anything, that we saw a lot of potential in him there. And then it kind of like got a little rocky in his second season, didn't bounce back the way that we thought. And we're like, okay, sophomore slump. And then even in this third season where there was a little bit more availability for minutes and stuff, and yes, he had some injuries along the way, didn't quite see the bounce again. And so a lot of people think that Zaire Williams will probably be on the move this offseason to a place where they can try to pull his potential out just a little bit more. And you know, what better place than the Indiana Pacers, who have done some things like that before. So I want to pay attention to that name. I'm not really seeing a bunch of other names I'd be all that interested in. I think it's worth taking a flyer on Zaire Williams. And again, let's talk about the purpose behind it. We're trying to clear up space for Jarris Walker to try to work his way into the rotation, because otherwise he is completely buried, right? We don't have like lengthy wings on the team, and this is a way for us to try and use our culture and our development skills to bring something out of a clearly very talented young man in Zaire Williams. So I think I'd like to try to explore a deal like that. So we're here on Fanspo. You guys know Fanspo. It's a cool website that helps us just like make little moves like this and to just add a sense of realism to this series, right? So who are we going to get again? I already forgot. We're going to the Memphis Grizzlies to try to make a Zaire Williams trade. The thing about this too is the Grizzlies are trying to like clear cap space and things like that, and this does help them clear just a little bit more cap space. So let's explore this a little bit. We're taking Jaylen Smith, trading him to the Grizzlies. They get a simple backup big to have for the season, which is pretty cool because they might be moving like a Brandon Clark or something to try and go make or to try and bring in a star player. So then we go and we look at Zaire Williams, who again, we'd be picking up his team option. If we did that, how does that just work in and of itself? I presume that works. Yup, that works. Okay, very, very cool, right? Now, they probably try to sell us on like the Zaire Williams has like a lot more potential and he's a lot younger type thing. So I'd be willing to say that we can just throw in like one of our second round picks or something. Cause like, what do the Grizzlies really have for like picks this year? They have a couple second round picks, so they're probably not all that interested in it. Is this something where we could like move up in the draft somehow? I just went and looked, and the Grizzlies have the 39th and the 58th pick in the draft. Is there anything that makes sense for us to do in this one? Like, do we give them like 36 and 50 or something, and we take 39 from them? Like, is that something that's probably worth it? Do they want 3 second round picks, I guess, is kind of the question to consider as well. I'm going to presume probably not. I don't think that makes a ton of sense. So we might have to explore kind of a different means of this. So let's do something like this then, because we have the 50 and 51st pick in the draft. So let's just say we're sending both of those over to the Grizzlies, right? Let's just walk with me for a second, all right? Then they have the 58th pick. So we'd be giving them 2 second round picks, which is too much. We'd be taking back the 58th pick just as like a, yeah, you guys are basically also getting to move up in the second round a little bit. Do they really want those picks? Probably not, but they're looking to make a lot of moves this offseason. So we're like, look, we're giving you two assets now that are relatively the same value as the 58th pick, right? To go and help you make your offseason moves because they're going to be trying to make a lot of trades this offseason. So let's just say then that we're taking back the 58th pick because we still want that pick. Which one is that actually? It's this Oklahoma City pick. That makes sense. So we would take back the 58th pick in this draft. And now if we take a look at this trade, let's just take a look at what it looks like for just a second. So we'd be getting back Zaire Williams, and we got rid of one of our second round picks that we just didn't need. We moved back in the second round a little bit because of it, which, look, it's kind of hard to trade like the 50th something pick in the draft. Like normally you have to pay teams to take it. This way we don't have to pay anybody. We just move back in the draft a little bit, and we get a player that we can hopefully develop. They arguably get the better player in Jaylen Smith, but we just have such a clog at that position that it's really not a big deal. So I think overall this works, and I'd rather take the chance at Zaire Williams, who was he a lottery pick? Yeah, he was the 10th overall pick not that long ago. Like, I'd much rather just take the chance on trying to develop a player like this on the team, so I'm more than happy to say that this trade worked out. All right, so we no longer have these picks here. We now have the Thunder, 24-second, which is the 58th pick in the draft. And we'll go and we'll move all of this up then just a little bit. Perfect. Okay, so we now have the 58th pick. Now we no longer have Jaylen Smith on the team. We have I always spell his name wrong. We have Zaire Williams. Perfect. Jaylen Smith no longer falls there. He's going to probably more likely be somewhere down here for us, right? So now we've got a little bit more opening at the power forward spot. We're going to be bringing in 2 power forwards anyway, so I feel good about that. We've got a guy that we can take a shot on next season. I feel good about that. Do we want to try and package these 2 picks together to try and move up in the second round? I think we should at least try to explore that. So I'm just looking at teams that are above us in the second round and seeing if it makes sense to like let them trade back at all. And like the Spurs, it doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. They don't really need that many more young players. The Portland Trailblazers have a couple second round picks already. The Bucks have a couple picks in the draft. They really don't need any more. Same with the Jazz. Toronto had a couple picks in this one, and this is the Celtics' first round pick, and they probably want to use that pick. So I don't necessarily see a great way for us to move back at all. So this might be something where we just have both these picks. Maybe we do like a draft and stash player or something like that. I don't know. I just don't really see a great way for us to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to explore like some other teams around the NBA that don't have like any picks or something and see if they're willing to give us just something for these second round picks. You know who has no draft picks on this night is the Brooklyn Nets. Just looking through, yeah, the Brooklyn Nets don't have anything. How can we make this work? I'm just adding a third team onto it. It's really not that important. This is to just keep consistency amongst the trades and everything. Is there somebody that for 2 second-round picks we'd be willing to take on that maybe they don't even want anymore on their team? I don't think they're giving us a Jaylen Wilson. That doesn't make a ton of sense. Bates Jop? He's got a player option that we could take on. Is Bates Jop probably worth it? Not really, in my opinion. They're not giving us either their first-round picks this next year. Duron Sharp, probably not. I don't think they're giving us any of these guys for our 2 second-round picks. Are there any picks that they would give us that make a ton of sense? Because, like, what would we be possibly trading them? I'd prefer really not to go up the 36th pick. I'd like to take somebody at some point in this, but, like, nobody's going to trade for the 58th pick. So I feel like we're just kind of going to have to hold on to that one more than likely, unless there's, like, a pick that we really don't care to have in, like, the second round going forward. Not just looking through them, I feel like all these picks could have, like, some value going forward. So I don't really think so. I think we're just going to have to use the 36th and 58th pick in this year's draft. Maybe the 58th pick is a draft and stash. I mean, it's like at the very end of the draft, so it's just going to be what it's going to be, but let's see who's available at the very least. Alrighty, y'all, so we're back here on the Fanspo mock draft. This is a cool tool that they have that uses like some AI and stuff to kind of determine where they think the draft will go. It can be different every single time you run it. You can adjust a bunch of sliders on it. Really, really cool thing. I think it adds a sense of realism to this series that we're doing, because I'm not just being like, I think this guy's going to be available around this point, right? It makes us actually go through the process to be like, oh, hey, like this is what's going on. Like Dalton Knecht falling to 14 probably isn't going to happen, but in this simulation, it did, right? And Kyle Filipowski going a little bit high there, actually, in my opinion. But we've got the 36th pick first that we're going to use, so it's kind of a earlier second round pick towards the middle. Maybe we can find somebody that can help contribute to this team like later. Maybe there's more of a veteran guy or something that we can bring in that could be kind of interesting. I don't really know, but I like the feature of the mock draft or whatever, just to kind of, like I said, give it a sense of realism in this. Looking at who's going, ooh, Justin Edwards with a late first is kind of a interesting pick in that sense. Ooh, I see it. I see somebody I kind of like. Oh, Ryan Dunn was who I wanted. Terrence Shannon would have been cool too. But okay, who do we got available? So there's a couple players that really stand out to me here. Like Harrison Ingram is a really interesting player. What year was Harrison Ingram? Okay, yeah, he was like a junior. Okay, perfect. So Harrison Ingram is a really, really interesting player because he does a lot of things like really solid. He's clearly a winner. He's a very tough player. He shot the ball pretty well, defended pretty well. More importantly, he's length at the wing. And I feel like just looking at our team, like we've got the point guard positions like pretty much down, right? You look at the wings then, like you got Ben Shepherd who's about 6'6", you got about 6'5" or 6'6" in Mathurin, like 6'5" in Neesmith. That's why we picked up Zaire to add a little bit of length to the wing, right? To help us with our defense. Clearly we could score plenty. So whatever we can do to up our defense, I feel like Harrison Ingram could really help us with that. So that's an interesting guy for me to look at. Cameron Christie, a guy that I've watched work out a couple times in person because he's local to me. Really interesting player. His brother Max is in the NBA. It shows like NBA potential, but I'm not really sure how much I like him. I think Dylan Jones is a really interesting prospect. He just fills up the stat sheet, right? So the thing with Dylan Jones is like, obviously you see all the stats here. It looks really, really good. It's really impressive. He's very physical, very good around the rim, strong rebounder, strong defender. On the offensive side of the ball, despite the fact that he put up 20 points a game, his game is kind of limited in that sense. Like a lot of his stuff is like hustle points. Like you're not going to get a really good shooter out of him, which is always a little bit concerning when you're 6'6" and you can't shoot. When so much of your game is rebounding and stuff like that. I just don't know how far you can go in the NBA with that, and he does kind of have a turnover problem at points too, so I'm a little bit shy of him. I think Baylor Shireman would be a steal in a lot of ways. I don't think he's necessarily the length that we're looking for on the wing. I'm looking for a little more defensive versatility, and he's not going to be probably a great defender, but he'd be a great shooter to bring on the team, and I think that's really interesting. Ulrich Kromke is a guy that a lot of people had going in like the first round at some point, and now people are starting to fall back a little bit. There's a lot of upside in him, but it's going to take probably a while to utilize that. Melvin Ajinça, a really, really good shooter that we can look at. But I think overall, I'd just rather take Harrison Ingram. I think that that's a good fit for us. There's some length and some size on the wing, some defensive versatility, and hopefully a solid shooter for us. So, you know what? Let's just take us some Harrison Ingram. Harrison Ingram. He would be making this much money relatively, about 2 seasons for him. So, you know what, we can move these guys kind of around like as we see fit. Maybe Aaron Nesmith is more so like here in the depth chart. It's really not all that important at the end of the day, but let's just say for simplicity's sake we do this, and then we put Harrison Ingram here. So we've added some length to the team and some defensive versatility, hopefully. We don't know if these guys will get on the court ever, but it's nice to have that option because we didn't have that option on the team before. There goes the 36th pick in the draft. Let's move on to use the 58th. Alrighty, so we're here at the end of the draft, and we've got some interesting names available at the very least, and there's kind of a couple ways I'm looking at going with this. I think just going and trying to find somebody that could maybe contribute to the team right away would be kind of a cool thing, right? Like, contribute to the team is maybe too generous of a term. That's someone, if we had to throw him in for whatever reason, like, wouldn't be the worst option ever, right? I look at AJ Mitchell, who was a junior guard at UC Santa Barbara this year, got to 20 points a game, very, very creative. Definitely one of the better, like, I can go get a bucket type dudes out there. 6'4", about 200 pounds, has good size, was a good defender. Playmaking was a little He wasn't a great passer, but he was pretty smart without the basketball, which I thought was interesting, right? If for whatever reason he had to get in, we could kind of see him as maybe like a little bit bulkier Nembhard option, which could be kind of interesting, but you know, maybe not the best option. There's not going to be a phenomenal option here at the end of the draft. I look at Trey Alexander, who's kind of a similar prospect in that way. Get to a lot of the similar things, like pretty good at getting to the rim, pretty good at being a creator for himself, not always the best at getting others necessarily involved, but he played at Creighton where they were just in a good system, so you'd like to think that he translates decently to the NBA. The shooting stroke is a little bit iffy with him as well. Like, if I go back to AJ Mitchell, he did shoot like 40% from 3, but it's on very, very low attempts, so something I'm a little bit concerned about. Like, there's also Osa here, who is just a really solid contributor as a senior at Marquette, probably a good versatile switch defender. Can't spread the floor though, and that kind of worries me at his position. So I think I kind of want to stick around like the AJ Mitchell or Trey Alexander route. I like the idea of AJ Mitchell a little bit more because he's played so much more off-ball basketball. So I think for that reason alone, we're going to take AJ Mitchell. Now, I don't know if AJ Mitchell ends up making the team or anything like this, or if we kind of just store him in the G League. Maybe he's just like a two-way player for this year. So that's certainly something that we could consider with him. For the time being, just kind of look at it that way, that it's like, okay, we're not sure if he's going to be on the roster or not. We'll bring him into training camp, see how he looks, something like that, right? So for now, we'll throw AJ there as kind of like the reserve guard for us. It's not the worst thing to have young guards on the team, right? Not really a huge deal. But all right, we got 3 roster spots left. We kind of talked about who they were going to be, right? It's going to be Pascal, Obi, and I would honestly like to bring James Johnson back. I don't know if we necessarily need him at that position, but we'll think about it. How much is a max contract for Pascal Siakam? Let's look it up. Siakam is eligible for a 5-year, $245 million contract this summer. Okay, that's what he gets. Very simple. Just because I can't do math, we're going to do this divided by 5. That's $49 million a year. Is that true? Oh my goodness. Yeah, I guess that makes some sense. Well, you know what? That's just what it's going to be, most likely. I know, isn't it crazy? It's crazy to think about that. That's how much money that guys are making nowadays. But 5 years, $245 million for Pascal Siakam. He's going to want the max. They're going to give him the max. They're going to do whatever they can to bring him back. He's a really, really good basketball player, so I don't blame them at all for wanting to do that. So Spicy P, welcome back to the Indiana Pacers. Where did his picture go? Oh, well, it loaded now. I'm not sure what happened there for a second. I think my spreadsheet was just lagging. But all right, we got Pascal Siakam back on the team. What is it going to take to bring Obi Toppin back is the question. I think about a guy like Obi Toppin, right? Young player, was a good contributor to this team. I presume he likes playing for this team too, just because like they were able to kind of finally unlock him, which is probably going to be a big thing for him wanting to stay. So let's presume that somebody throws like a decent contract at him and makes us really think about it. I'm going to assume for the bench player that he is, and I'm just going to throw Obi Toppin on here, is it safe to say that he's probably going to want like $15 million? Like, I feel like that's pretty appropriate, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we'd give him, what, are we going to give him 4 years? And what would that be? That would be $60 million on a contract. Maybe that's too little, but he is coming off the bench, and he's probably a 7th man at most because TJ McConnell's on the team. But we do have his like a restricted free agency like right, so we can match anything. I don't know too many teams that are going to be able to give it, because here's the thing, y'all, like, these aprons are scary as hell for teams to work with right now. I don't see anybody giving more than this for Obi Toppin, because the teams that really have the flexibility that can go after him, like, they probably don't need that position, just thinking off the top of my head. You guys can argue with me in the comments if you want about that, and I'd probably be willing to hear it. It's not a huge difference for us at the end of the day, but that's what I think is probably fair for him. So Jarris Walker already moving. Oop, I did not mean to do that. Jarris Walker already moving down the depth chart pretty quickly, and that's why we moved Jalen Smith, right? We just rather have a Zaire Williams on the team, but we have one roster spot left. And you know what? I want to bring James Johnson back, man. I really do. I feel like we can use just one more wing / forward on the team, and it's just, that's our guy, right? Like, that's just our dude on the team, right? So let's bring back the boy James Johnson. James Johnson would make this much money for one season. Okay, here's the important thing right here. We stayed within the first apron, which is very important. And here's why. As soon as you move into this second apron, that's when you're not allowed to combine contracts anymore into trades, which is very scary to do. If a star player becomes available or something like that, that's a big thing. And we have a lot of tradable contracts. So this is good. We were able to maintain that flexibility at the very least. I think that's huge for us going forward. So I'm pretty happy that we were able to stay within that first kind of tax apron. Like, we still get restricted because we're in that, but now we're still able to like package and trade dudes, as far as my understanding goes. I've been trying to read up on those rules more and more, especially because they're going to keep on changing and getting more restrictive. You guys should look those up if you haven't already, because some of the trade ideas I see in the comments section just don't even make sense considering those things. But I get it. It's a lot to read up on and it's not fun. But anyway, this is your 2024-2025 Indiana Pacers. Doesn't look a whole lot different, does it? But you know what? This team was good this year. They were really good, and they were young. So we want to keep encouraging them to grow as this group, right? Like, obviously, Benedict Mathurin just being on the team, hopefully for a whole season, and having him available for the playoffs is going to be huge, right? Like, that's just going to be a big thing for the team in general. We added some guys that have a little bit more versatility than we had on the roster before in Zaire Williams and Harrison Ingram. Hopefully another guy that we can continue to develop, a former 10th overall pick that we didn't have to pay too much to get. Really cool. Harrison Ingram, just a rookie on the team that we can kind of grow and develop a little bit more, right? We ended up keeping AJ Mitchell on the roster here at the end just because, look, he's very cheap because of where we drafted him. It keeps us within the first tax apron, and he's a little bit more mature of a rookie anyway that we can bring in, and if we absolutely need him to, he's probably not going to be the worst contributor out there. He's probably not going to be just an absolute negative for us. So looking at this team, I feel pretty solid about this overall. There's a lot of versatility on it. It should be a really good offense again. Hopefully we've built upon the defense a little bit more. We have a full season to work with Pascal Siakam. I'm really excited about this team going forward. I know this probably wasn't the most exciting ideal offseason ever, but I don't think there's a ton of moves that need to be made. At the end of the day, you've secured Pascal Siakam going forward, and that's the most important thing. But hey, you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. I appreciate it as always. I love doing these videos, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.